In a world where you usually have to choose between the utility of a family wagon and the ruggedness of a 4x4, AMC engineered a machine that rendered the compromise obsolete. The Eagle is a vehicle that shouldn't exist, a wood-paneled unibody passenger car sitting atop the heavy-duty DNA of a Jeep. It has the silhouette of a suburban grocery getter and the engineering soul of a mountain goat, yet it pioneered a category that would eventually conquer the global car market. There is no traditional clunky truck frame here. This was a surgical transplant of a full-time all-wheel drive system into a civilian sedan, but how did this desperate Frankenstein of parts, bin engineering, become the hidden ancestor of the modern crossover sport utility vehicle? By 1978, American Motors was staring down the barrel of financial ruin. The boardroom numbers were brutal. Annual sales had slumped below 300,000 units, and cash reserves dipped under $30 million, a rounding error for Detroit's giants, but a death sentence for AMC. The fuel crisis had turned thirsty V8 engines into showroom poison, and even the Jeep acquisition, once a hopeful gamble, now looked like an anchor. Internal memos from early that year read like survival instructions: maximize return on every tool and die, avoid new factory investments, and find a way, anyway, to sell a car that did not look like yesterday's leftovers. The mandate was clear: no clean sheet designs, no expensive rethinks. If AMC was going to survive, it had to build something different with what it already had, and it had to do it fast. The Concord Compact, already in production, became the only logical starting point. Executives circled the wagons, literally, looking for an angle the big three had not already squeezed dry. The answer was simple: bolt Jeep's four-wheel drive guts under a suburban wagon shell and sell it to snowbelt families desperate for traction. It was not a moonshot. It was a calculated parts bin gamble. The board's desperation set the stage for a project that would ignore convention and, for a brief moment, make AMC the most innovative automaker in America. Roy Lund didn't waste time sketching dreams. He walked into the Eagle project with a clear set of boundaries and a reputation for solving impossible puzzles. This was the man who made the Ford GT40 fit a V8 where it didn't belong, and later wrangled the Jeep XJ into existence. At American Motors, his marching orders were blunt: keep the unibody, don't ruin the ride, and absolutely no open checkbooks. Lund's 1979 design brief spelled it out. Every solution had to fit inside the existing Concord shell. No ladder frames, no bespoke castings, no exotic materials. The car had to feel like a Concorde on the road, not a Jeep in disguise. That meant NVH, noise, vibration, and harshness had to stay at suburban sedan levels, even with a transfer case and extra drive shafts humming beneath the floor. Lund's playbook was all about targeted reinforcement, not brute force. He had seen what overbuilt frames did to weight and comfort in the GT40 days. Now he pushed for localized strength: box in the suspension pickups, brace the floor pan, but leave the rest of the shell untouched to save both weight and dollars. The result was a design box that forced every engineer to squeeze maximum utility from minimum change, a philosophy that would define every nut, bolt, and weld on the Eagle. Transforming the Concord from a mild-mannered commuter into a legitimate all-weather brute required more than just slapping a transfer case underneath. The original unibody shell, designed for Sunday grocery runs, was never meant to handle the torque shocks and twisting loads of a full-time four-wheel drive system. Interboxed sections, thick steel reinforcements welded along the side rails and around the suspension pickups. These were not decorative. They were the backbone, turning a sedan skeleton into something that could take a pounding without flexing like a soda can in a vise. Chassis engineers under Roy Lund's direction added cross members and gussets at the critical stress points, the front subframe, the rear suspension mounts, and especially the floor pan where the driveline cradle would soon nestle. The cradle itself, a steel subframe bolted directly to the unibody, served as the anchor for the transfer case, drive shafts, and rear axle. It spread out the mechanical loads so the sheet metal did not buckle every time the viscous coupling sent torque to the wheels. According to internal test data, these localized reinforcements bumped the body's torsional stiffness by about 30%, all while adding just under 150 pounds to the curb weight. That is a featherweight penalty for a car suddenly expected to climb snowbanks and shrug off potholes like a Jeep. The beauty of this approach was its restraint. No full redesign, no exotic alloys, just targeted steel where it mattered. The rest of the conquered shell stayed untouched, keeping costs and mass in check. What started as a desperate cost-saving measure ended up as a blueprint for how to turn a soft suburban wagon into a sturdy, trail-ready crossover decades before anyone called them that. Power in the Eagle did not just travel from engine to wheels, it took a calculated detour through the new Process 119 transfer case, a compact cast iron unit with Ferguson Formula roots. Instead of clunky levers or part-time setups, the NP119 used a viscous coupling, a stack of metal plates spinning in silicone fluid. When the front and rear wheels turned at different speeds, the fluid sheared and thickened, smoothly shifting torque to the axle with grip. No gear whine, no binding, no need for driver input. This system let the Eagle glide down summer highways and dig through winter drifts with the same quiet confidence. The real magic happened when the 258 cubic inch Straight-Six met the NP119. This engine was not built for high revving drama. It delivered a steady 200 pound-feet of torque just above idle, according to period dyno sheets. That low-end muscle let the viscous coupling do its work without overheating or bogging down, whether crawling up an icy driveway or slogging through mud. Driveline wind-up, a common problem in other 4x4s, was avoided thanks to the NP119's constant slip. AMC's engineering notes reveal the Eagle could send up to 65% of torque rearward before locking, with a maximum shear torque of about 110 pound-feet. All-weather traction, no drama, just seamless power, whatever the surface. Raising a Concorde wagon 7 inches off the ground sounds easy until you try to keep the front wheels from ripping themselves apart. AMC's engineers did not have the luxury of designing a bespoke 4x4 suspension. They started with the Concorde's independent front end, a setup built for potholes, not rock gardens, and then had to figure out how to shoehorn Jeep-style half shafts into a geometry that was never meant to flex that far. The result was a masterclass in compromise. The Eagle's independent front suspension used longer coil springs and taller knuckles to clear snowbanks and suburban curbs alike, but every inch of lift pushed the constant velocity joints closer to their design limits. Service manuals from 1980 list a maximum safe CV angle of 22 degrees per joint, but field testing showed that anything over 20 degrees started to chew through boots and bearings in under 30,000 miles. AMC's suspension team, led by Bob Dylan, had to walk a tightrope, enough articulation for a 7-inch ground clearance, but not so much that the half shafts grenaded themselves on the way to the ski lodge. Their answer was a blend of reinforced lower control arms, revised bump stops, and an aggressive limit on droop travel. The ride was still soft enough for carpool duty, but the front end could take a hit without folding up like a card table. The irony is that the plush, sedan-like ride, so essential to AMC's marketing, was only possible because the engineers kept the half-shafts from working overtime. It is the kind of packaging trade-off that defined the Eagle comfort and durability, always in uneasy balance, with the weakest link waiting to reveal itself in the next snowstorm. Ask anyone who's wrenched on an Eagle, and you'll hear the same story. The vacuum system is its glass jaw. AMC's shortcut for engaging the front axle was a tangle of brittle plastic lines and rubber hoses, all relying on perfect suction to pull a little actuator deep in the wheel well. When new, it worked most of the time, but after a few winters, those hoses cracked, connections leaked, and the actuator itself could seize up in a salty slush bath. The result? You stomp the gas in a snowstorm, and only the rear wheels spin. Some owners learned to keep a spare length of vacuum hose in the glove box. Others drilled tiny holes in the actuator and ran manual cables, bypassing the whole Rube Goldberg mess. Veteran mechanics still groan about chasing phantom leaks that left the Eagle stuck in two-wheel drive, no matter what badge was on the tailgate. The drivetrain was stout, but this vacuum Achilles heel haunted the car's reputation in the very weather it was built to conquer. On a bitter January morning, a longtime Eagle owner points the car's nose into a snow-packed driveway and lets the 258 Straight-Six idle forward. No drama, no spinning, just the slow, inevitable crawl of a machine that was built to embarrass front-wheel drive sedans and leave their drivers shoveling. The odometer, faded and stubborn, reads well past 200,000 miles. This is not a garage queen, it is a survivor, and the story it tells is written in salt stains and creaky door hinges. A spec analyst lines up the Eagle's silhouette against a modern Subaru Outback. The wheelbase difference? Just 3.3 inches, 106.5 inches for the Eagle, 109.8 inches for the Outback. The ground clearance gap, once a bragging right, now sits at 7 inches for the AMC and 8.7 inches for Subaru's latest. It is a visual echo, two wagons decades apart, both promising to get you home when the plows have not come. The Eagle, born of desperation, predicted a market that would not exist for another 15 years. In the real world, on real snow, with real families, the numbers matter less than the fact that the old AMC is still out there, doing exactly what it was built to do. Today, every crossover clogging the suburbs owes a debt to AMC's wild gamble, a plush wagon with Jeep bones and just enough torque to shame the skeptics. The Eagle did not just bridge comfort and grit, it invented the blueprint. Sometimes desperation engineers the future. Let us hear your take below.